The Hangout on Air is live.
Stop broadcast, it says.
You press that to stop it. Hi there.
Oh, hello. Welcome. I think we're live.
We actually don't know if anybody's there. Well, let's just introduce ourselves. I'm Bruce Bell.
And I'm Elizabeth Andes Bell.
And this is Embodied Soul.
Before we get into the content of tonight, Bruce just wants to go over a few logistics.
Well, we're using a platform that is not just Google Hangouts, and so I don't think we have an available chat room to discuss things with you, but it should be underneath the screen here, down at the bottom of the page would be the Facebook comment page. So if anybody go down there and write in the add comments here, I'll show you on the screen where that would be. Just give me a second here. Come on, cursor. All right. Let's go down and we'll look at the screen together. Right down there. So you should be watching us right here. You're up here, and then we scroll down to the bottom of the page, and there is a place to type in your comments. So if anybody could type in a comment down there, that would be kind of cool. We'd be on our way knowing that people could reach us. If not, we will give you an email address, and you could email Elizabeth, and she could check in on her phone to see if there's any questions that we could answer at the end of this presentation. Okay?
Okay, so welcome to our free webinar. You know, our little subtitle is, it's time to be the person you've always known you could be. And isn't it? I mean, it is. It's just time. And we all know that. I think that's kind of where we are right now. Tonight's webinar, we're going to talk about ways that we can do that. It's called Body Awakening Practices for Living Free and Empowered. So we're going to be introducing you to something different. You know, the intelligence of your body is a pathway to your evolution.
Hi, Eileen.
But only if you live it. Hi, Eileen.
You saw it. That's cool.
Okay. So what gets in the way of you living a great life? What stops you from being the change maker you want to be, or from having the fulfilling relationships that you dream of? What defeats you? Fear of rejection, emotional hurts, lack of confidence, unclear purpose? No. What defeats you is a lack of connection to a larger network of information and vitality. What defeats you is the habit of separateness that's a function of our current evolutionary consciousness. We cut ourselves off from stuff that's already there, available, feeding us, nourishing us, informing us. And it's just where we are at this stage of our evolution, or where we were. But I think it really underlies the fact that it's not just your problem and my problem. It's more about the way that we're wired and about how we're going to live through the great changes of our times, because we have a foot in both worlds. What we've learned in the last 20 years is enough to revolutionize the way that we live and move in our bodies. But we lack an integrated way of applying that. So I studied anatomy and physiology and kinesiology back in the 80s and 90s, as Bruce did. And if you just look at that world alone, it's radically changed since then. So, and so has knowledge all across the board in all different streams of intelligence. It's hard to keep up. It's hard to see the connections, but the connections are there, believe me. There was a great somatic psychotherapist, a real groundbreaker, Stanley Kellerman, who said, there's no change, there's no transformation without change in the body. It's like the body is our container, and we do all this work on our energy, and we do all this work on our mindset, and the densest part of us, the part that holds the patterns over and over again, repeating in us, keeps pulling us back to that old way, that old center of gravity.
So you can't transform with just your mind, right? You can't create without your body. You need to be in your body to manifest creations. It doesn't happen just in the head. So if you want to transform your life and be healthier and be happier, then you're going to have to spend some time dealing with and learning what it is like to be truly embodied.
Our bodies hold our memories, sometimes even our grandparents' memories. PBS recently reported that intense trauma can have a genetic impact on your future children. And there was a study about Holocaust survivors and their children. And we've even seen a lot of clients who are grandchildren of Holocaust survivors that have these patterns. But the studies show that they had similar genetic variations for depression and anxiety.
Isn't that something?
Yeah,
I mean, trauma from one generation on a physiological level gets passed on down.
Right, for multiple generations. Old patterns of emotional responses and habitual energy reactions shape us. They shape us well before we construct our thoughts and stories about them too. And this creates friction. It fixates our point of view. It freezes us out of the opportunities that come to us in the unfolding present. It fogs our brain, robs our vitality, creativity, and keeps us struggling. In short, we live in a framework constructed by our past. We miss the present, and we miss the unfolding future. Creativity gets harder to find. We keep looping through endless variations of empty. It feels empty. It feels like time gets filled up with things to do. We may struggle alone, but we also struggle through this collectively. We might experience things falling apart or never really coming together, boredom, emptiness, overwhelm, a hunger for purpose, rage, a constant barrage at things coming at you so fast that you go numb. These are all symptoms of the sea change that we're all living through. They're all symptoms of this end of one era of consciousness and the dawning of another one. We're in the midst of a big, messy, perfectly imperfect seismic evolution in consciousness. We're on the edge of being able to make a really big shift in human evolution. And you and I and all of us really have the opportunity to be a part of that. But here's the thing, you can't just read about it. You've got to live it. It's a big shift and you've got to dive into it. It's hard for us to see this. Hearing about it does nothing to make your life any better or give you an understanding of what this kind of change could mean for you. Even if you're sitting here on this webinar tonight, it's not the same thing as diving into an immersion of it. You've got to experience it. You've got to embody it. And really, it's easier than you think.
Can we pause for a moment?
Sure.
I get a little scroll on the computer over here, and Eileen has sent me a message. And Eileen, I think it was, this is a technical thing. It did say that you could hear me, or it said that you couldn't hear me. And that's really important. So I don't know if you could type that message again. Because the way I see it, it cuts up on my computer screen on the far upper right for about a half a second, and then it disappears. So I'm just going to try that. We don't want to be not communicating with you folks. But we'll continue on and assume that it's working, and then right before the slideshow, we'll take a little break and go down and look at the comments, okay?
So if you're interested in developing your emotional intelligence and your intuitive and kinesthetic intelligence, if you're interested in growing more of your own innate capacities, if you're interested in mastering your energy to have more focus and vitality, if you want to experience a whole new level of richness, beauty, connection, and impact in your world, if you want to live a life, a soul-centered life of purpose, then you've come to the right place. But first, we're going to tell you a little bit about us. Just a little bit. There's a lot to tell, but we're just going to tell you a little bit about who we are. We started off as dancers, and we became energy healers and yoga teachers and entrepreneurs. We owned and operated yoga and fitness centers in Manhattan for over 20 years while we were raising 2 children. 2 years ago, we sold our business and we moved to an old church in the Catskill Mountains. And although we have meditated and moved with energy for decades, and although we've really been circling around this work that we're going to be sharing with you for decades, something really surprising happened to us when we moved up here. We dove fully into the work. There's our little doggy bear barking. Once we moved up here, over the course of several months, we both experienced an embodied awakening. We both awoke into a dimension of vitality and clarity and a deep peace that felt totally new and natural. And it wasn't just something that happened to us when we meditated or had a particularly wonderful, connected, deep experience. It was an ongoing structure change, not a state change. It wasn't passing. It's really something that we can experience anytime, anywhere, and it's something that gets stronger with practice. Do you want to talk about what happened to us, how we spent that year on the floor in '82? And
I do. I have something important to tell you, but let's make sure this logistic part is taken care of. So will you hold with us for about 2 minutes, okay? I'm going to take you off of this screen and go look at the other screen for a second. So we'll be over here. Hello. We're there, and just give me a second.
Oh, I can hear you, she says.
I can hear you.
Hi, Eileen.
And there's other, Leah Ann. I could hear you. That's good.
Hi.
Exciting. Good. And I think it's working for Eileen. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good.
That relieves a lot. So
You were going to talk about.
Yeah, we don't need the other screen right now. We can just talk. So we're movement pioneers, Somanauts. We've been having in-the-body experiences all our lives. Personally, I played football all the way through college. And in that time, I had a number of experiences where my focus would get so strong and I would see things like running in football, jumping up, catching a football, and also seeing it go into slow motion, seeing, you know, like the spiral of the football really drop into my hands, and then I'd catch it and everything would get quick again. And I was like, wow, what is that? You know, I realized that at some point I realized that this space-time continuum was flexible, that it wasn't just the ordinary reality that we always had, like in our walking lives, but at certain peak or concentrated moments, things could change. And then as we were dancing and exploring, well, we explored always, that's how we met, we explored movement. We were more interested in the source of movement and the energy of movement. We both had this connection to energy, you know, how to build it up, how to focus, and so forth. And we were very lucky in our lives. We met a gentleman, Calvin Holt. He had, for some of you who have ever seen the movie Serendipity, he was, it used to be Serendipity 3, and he was one of the 3, but he was really a wizard. And we had a movement class, and that's where we met. And that was it since then, where we would just go explore energies. And we worked with him for about 15 years. Both of us, we go in every Wednesday and we just work. And there was no conditions upon it except that we were there to explore energy and to explore where the essence lies. And in that time, he said, listen, you kids, you need to have your own technique. And I said, well, what do you mean? You need your own technique. You need to know what it is, how you move in space. And I says, well, I've studied this, I studied that, and listed all the like classes that we went to. He says, no, you need to know for yourself what is up, down, left, right, front, back, in, out. And so what we did for 1 year, every morning, we would go in and lie down on the floor in our studio and put on a piece of music and wait for the movement to start happening. And it would begin to unfold. And then what happens is that you begin to put a mannerism on, like the body itself was conditioned. We had these dancer trained bodies. So they're conditioned to take an impulse and all of a sudden go and make a certain gesture out of it. Well, what happened was that the gesture took off and took away the impulse, because the impulse, as it begins to move, if you're staying true to yourself, could be changing moment by moment by moment, because the unfolding expression, being true to yourself, was always changing and developing. We did that for a year, and incredibly valuable, because that's how we knew what we knew. Well, lo and behold, last year, moving up here, I helped build this home here. I'm not going to show you all of it right now, but we live in this old church from the 1890s and have fixed it up. And this is our studio. It's our dream studio. We had it for many years, and it was abandoned. And so we came up here and we said, burn the ships. We're going after this work. And lo and behold,
here we are.
Here you are. Look out, folks, because when you ask for it and you put yourself in a line for it, things could happen. Well, what happened to me after working for a year and a half of doing pretty hard, heavy construction, my right leg stopped working. I could not walk.
So he was back to the floor again.
I had to go back to the floor.
The better part of a year.
Yeah, 4 months. It took me 4 months just to start being able to take walks in the woods. And they were slow walks. I had to go back and learn to take my first step, learn to shift my weight so I could lift up my right leg before I put it down. That took a month, right? The rest of the time was on the floor, praying, going into deep states of being friends with my body. What can I do today? It really was a prayer. Oh God, please show me what I can do today. I'm there for you. Help me, because I did not know how to do this. And I went to surgeons. I went to, she's saying, go faster. Anyway, all the medical ways that I went to find out in orthopedics, they wanted to maybe replace my hip, right? Or physical therapists wanted me to do exercises. But, the exercises they were doing were biomechanic exercises. Well, anyway, the best way to know what you're doing is to go do it. And that's what we offer to you. And we will share a little bit more about what that exploration can look for you. So I'm sorry I went on so far.
No, it's okay, dear. Don't worry about it. So we're going to be sharing some of what Bruce did tonight with you. And we're going to be sharing a lot of it on our immersion weekend, April 13th through 15th. We're going to talk about that toward the end again.
Well, it isn't just what I did. It's also what you did. And,
yeah,
lie down on the floor with me and rediscovered many things.
Well, also, we never really stopped working. We've been movement researchers for all these years. And so we've got a pretty, we think, pretty clear system that we want to share with you. And the outcomes are that you're going to feel better in your body. You're going to feel more whole, more connected, more centered. You're going to perceive differently. You're going to see a big picture unfolding. You're going to be able to tap into your timeless wisdom. You're going to learn techniques to help you move through your feelings quickly so you don't get stuck in them. You're going to learn how to move your body with more agility, proprioception, and integration. It doesn't matter how old you are or how healthy or unhealthy you are. Your body practice is a key practice to your overall psychological and spiritual well-being. I mean, you could do these things even in a wheelchair. You start where you are. You're going to feel more present, authentic, and fulfilled in your relationships. And you're going to master your energy. You're going to learn how to master your energies in situations where you might have blown your top before or gotten completely drained. You're going to learn how to stay more centered and effective.
When you open up your bodies, you open yourself up to more energy, more life force energy, more prana to be moving through both your body, moving through your physical body, your vital body, and your mental body. And another word for energy you might just put in as consciousness.
So let's do a quick recap of what we've covered so far. One, we're in the midst of a big shift. It's an evolution in consciousness, and it's causing massive upheaval and rapid change, and we're all getting triggered by it. Two, your body holds your history, and it's invested in keeping you repeating it, but it doesn't have to, because it also holds the key to your transformation. And where do these two stories meet? Well, when we weave them together, we get a different view of what's possible. We get an inside look at a simple secret that has really been hiding in plain sight. What's revealed is the basic architecture of life, and it's not what you thought. Now, we're going to go into some slides, but before we do that, did you want to do something about checking anything, or can we just jump in?
I think we're secure enough that we have sound and that folks are there.
Okay.
So we can go over to the slideshow.
Great.
All right. The second I have to get over to the screen. Sorry, guys. First time ever. Well, we'll get this.
There we go. So, as I said, let's take a look into this basic architecture of life. We call it the living matrix. There you go. So, it's a living web. It's the evolving living web of embodied consciousness. And we can go now to slide 3. So, the truth is, there we go.
We'll get it. Okay.
So the truth is, we don't know what's possible, right? We only know what's been. Michael Murphy, who is the founder of Esalen, he wrote a book called The Future of the Body. This is a quote from him. "We do not know the limits of bodily transformation." He has kept a catalog of extraordinary capacities of humans going way back. I believe he's been doing it in conjunction with Stanford University. He said that one of his greatest resources for finding these records, historical records of extraordinary capacities that humans had, was the Catholic Church, because they would have to keep a record of extraordinary things, the miracles that people who were being considered for sainthood had performed, and there was a system that they examined each one of these by. So extraordinary capacities have been around for a really long time, and I was also listening to him he was being interviewed one time, and he said this really interesting thing about how influenced we've been by Western psychology, by Freud, that he did his studies based on a very small sampling of upper class neurotic German and Austrian women. And based on that small sampling, we got a very narrow range of what is normal and a lot of information about challenges that people have in functioning, but this other side of the story about the capacities that we all hold is kind of a part of the story that hasn't been told. This other person is Sri Aurobindo, who Bruce and I just regard him as an evolutionary hero. He has been talking about this, pioneering this field forever. He's been defining the frontier of evolution for us, as Michael Murphy has. Aurobindo says, whatever unfolds was previously enfolded. So we're preloaded. We've got these capacities here. So really the question then becomes, okay, so what do we do to develop them? So you can go down now to the next
You sure you don't want to add one little thing about Sri Aurobindo?
You do. What is it?
Sri Aurobindo created integral yoga, and this is something that was developed from around 1910s through the 50s. But his soulmate, he had a soulmate, and somebody he worked with, Mira Alfassa, which he called and was known as the mother. And so he was the, in a sense, like the Krishna. He was the mind. And he talks about yoga in different, three parts. That you need the mind, you need the will, but you need the body. And so she was the one who explored. She did the experiential explorations of what he talked about. She could bring it to living life. She put it into the matter of living matter, that consciousness, so that we could evolve. So when you touch into that one body, which we will talk about real soon, that you make a change in this body, you're making a change in what? All bodies, right? Living matter. So I hear a lot of people talk about Sri Aurobindo and intellects and so forth, and they'll go on and on and on about this copious amount of research and evidence he did, and they don't talk about the mother. But she's the one who actually brings this to life, in my opinion.
Right.
Here's another one who's bringing it to life.
Absolutely. So my friend Malia suffered a traumatic brain injury about 20 years ago. And I don't know if that got her started on her journey of working with body-mind centering and other somatic studies. But as we're going to hear in her own words, this is really a story about what's possible. So I'm just going to read it. You can read it along with me. My personal path and my studies have been dedicated to psychosomatic healing because it was clear to me early on that the body doesn't lie. I could work with my mind from here to infinity, but things only transform when there is a cellular recognition and acceptance of new information. Enlightenment isn't really that interesting to me. Personally, I've always longed for a sense of being at home in myself. I understood that a slow, mindful, and sensate yoga and movement experiences would give rise to deeper experiences of embodiment. Sometimes pleasant, sometimes not, but certainly a means to becoming more human, more whole, and more grounded on this planet. There's nothing about any of this which insinuates exercising more, strengthening harder, or learning how to do a pose better. What embodiment does mean for me is taking time and attention to listen and develop a connection with ourselves. It means cultivating the support to release what we've been carrying for far too long. It means trusting the wisdom of the body's innate capacity to heal itself. It means taking responsibility for our own thoughts, feelings, words, and actions, as well as energetic boundaries. And what I feel more and more all the time is that it can allow us to get out of our own way so that we can co-create with the mysterious unseen world instead of try to be the headmaster of our own lives. Embodiment is not something we achieve. It's an internal process that demands maturity and willingness to be more open with ourselves, including our darkness, and it can't be judged from the outside. What we're beginning to understand is that there's much more to our healing and evolution than meets the eye. What we're beginning to understand is that we're not so much discrete muscles, organs, bodies, individuals, families, communities, countries, planets, solar systems, etc., but that we are a part of an evolving, living web of bioluminescent intelligence. So let's take a look now at what we've learned in the last 20 years about this living matrix of fascia inside our bodies that's revolutionizing the medical and fitness and wellness worlds of today. Many of you know that last week, fascia it made the big time. Science has now declared that fascia is the new organ of the body, the newest and the largest. And a lot of the people who've been working in the field of fascial research for the last 25 years are excited and kind of pissed off and chuckling. And
it's about time.
Yeah, right, right. But at least it means there'll be more money funding research. So this is exciting. Fascia is your body's richest and largest sensory organ.
Did I go too far? It's not. Oh, here we go. So one step.
Shape shifting. There you go. So fascia is a form of tissue, and it holds all our cells together, somewhere between 70 and 100 trillion cells. It's a lot of cells. It shape shifts into many forms. The ground substance of our cells is one form. Our teeth are also. Our finest ligaments, very thin sheets of periosteum that connect our muscle to bone, the thick padding on the bottoms of our feet. So it can be many things, many shapes. It changes its composition from viscosity to elasticity and plasticity, but basically it's like a mixture of water and glue. It's what holds us together, and it gives us shape. So this is a slide from Stanley Kellerman's book. It's a brilliant book. It's called Emotional Anatomy. And in it, you can see that I've put this here, this title, Characterology is also a Fascial Phenomenon, just to get a sense of kind of the play of forces here that shape us and hold us. Kellerman was another one of these great pioneers of this ground of body shaping and psychology and their relationship. He spoke of this integrative web of the subtle and physical body. That's really the area that Bruce and I play in. You know, where does that energy body and the physical body connect? Where is that bridge? We feel like the fascial network is really a very exciting area to explore as making that bridge. Kellerman found out some really interesting and important stuff these 25 years ago. You can go to the next slide, Bruce. So he used slow brain and slow movement. This helps us to change our neural networks and break old patterns. It's the heart of forming intimacy. He talked about glial cells as these voluntary evolutionary drivers. Glial cells, they work very slowly with this slow movement. Neurons are fast. There's tons of glial cells. I'll talk more about them in a minute. They're real. Just think about how they play. They help information get sent through your neural networks. They help you break old patterns. And, you know, when we're getting down to breaking old patterns, we're talking about old patterns that keep us disconnected. So what we're really talking about is what's the heart of forming intimacy, a felt embodied sense of intimacy. More fascial facts. It's loaded with nerve tissue. There are 10 times more nerve endings in your arm muscle in your arm fascia than there are in your arm muscle. So when you get a shot, the needle goes in and it hurts for a second because the fascia's picking up the pain. The muscle doesn't pick it up so much. Again, glial cells. Fascia's loaded with them. Glial cells, included in the glial category, are astroglial, which are stem cells of the brain. Charles Ridley, in this book, Stillness, Biodynamic Cranial Practice and the Evolution of Consciousness, talks about glial cells like giant satellite dishes. They resonate and entrain higher frequencies of energy in your brain, and they move through your nerves and entrain in torus fields. That's a big mouthful. We'll break that, not going to break that down tonight for you, but we will talk about it a little bit in the weekend on the 13th. But just to wrap it up here, fascia, according to Robert Schleip, big name in the fascia world, is by far our body's richest and largest sensory organ. So now let's take a deeper look into the living matrix, the microscopic view. What you see is pockets, enclosing pockets, enclosing pockets, enclosing pockets, all the way down to the pockets of each cell membrane. All of this is fascia, right? The tendon attaching to the bone, the fine ligaments that attach muscle to bone, fascia, the ground substance of all of your cells, fascia. Remember, it takes many different forms. It's a shapeshifter. You can go to the next slide now. So this is where we get into the minutia, the living matrix, the basic architectural design of life. Everywhere are these little fluid pockets. So when you get down to the smallest of the smallest of the small, what you see in fractals is a pocket filled with fluid down to these tiny microvacuoles, which are filled with fluid that allow this gliding movement between everything. As they studied movement, this gliding movement between the organs, and in particular at the level of the tendons, they noticed the system that was like cables and veil-like structures that would go and send out a little collagen thread, and then it would send out another one, and it would create these little geometric-like shapes that then would fill themselves with fluid, and that's how they move into open space.
You'll see a little video of that in a second.
Yeah. So the system looks totally chaotic in organization, and it seems to function in a manner that is, you're going to see, it's not like traditional biomechanics by any means. The sliding is created by these little polyhedron three-dimensional microvacuoles crisscrossing in space and making up these little collagen envelopes that move into open space. So for instance, just at the most basic level, I've always carried my purse, my heavy purse, on my right shoulder. Well, that extra load had my fascia realize that we needed some extra padding here. So on a very simple level, those little collagen fibers built up microvacuoles, filled them with fluid, made them more tough,
resistant
yes,
to certain forces.
Yes, to protect me. And this is what the body's always doing. It's always adapting.
And gave you a tight neck.
And gave me a really stiff neck. Okay, so let's move on. So this is what allows all the subtle movements in your body, except when you're carrying a really heavy shoulder bag, and then it kind of restricts those subtle movements. But what you need to know is that inherently the system loves to move, and it adapts really fast. Okay, so let's go to the next You know, if you want, can you go to the video? I can read over the showing of the video.
Let's see, right here. I think we got it. Yeah. Let's see what inside look here of under the skin, Gambarteau.
So yeah, this is Jean-Claude Gambarteau. He's the microvacuole guy. So when everyone said, oh, there's this new organ, it's the interstitial organ or the fascial system, Gambarteau calls this system the microvacuole system, and you can see why. Whoop. Can you get another slide up there while you have the video going or not? Is that asking too much?
No, I can't.
Okay. Well, anyway, so what you see are these little...
Look at this. Maybe you can see it somewhere. I mean, these little lines of force here, these are open fluid lines. They're communicators, and there's water and viscosity moving through this, and they reshape themselves, and they built themselves a little web, like a three-dimensional spider web of a tensegral structure. And we'll get to that even more. It's just fascinating to watch this develop.
And go back.
Oops. Come on back, screen.
Okay.
I got to reach over you to get it.
Oh, sorry.
There we go.
So, and they're filled with fluid. So what you can see in the, you see those little white triangular, or some of them are circular? Those are the little microvacuoles. And they're filling with this fluid. Now you keep it going on. So this is the way we move into open space. It's so interesting. You know, we send out this feeler, this collagen fiber, and then it'll go and doop, there's this other one. It builds, it branches out, and then it kind of links up with another one. And now you see it's starting to fill with fluid.
Incredibly flexible and adaptable, as it has created many, many different living creatures on this planet.
They're colonizing open space and filling it with the ground substance of our cells.
Okay.
Now, I just want to also digress for half a second here to talk about continuity of human life. So there is this, scientists have talked about this microbe. They have talked about the first living organism on Earth, which is a microbe, and they call it LUCA. They call it LUCA because it stands for Last Universal Common Ancestor. It's the first living organism on Earth, and it's not just about its genetic makeup. Yeah, we did the genome, and you know, they've identified the genes. But the exciting thing about LUCA is that that basically we're all descended from the same mother, and LUCA was our mother. And LUCA stretched out its cell membrane to create another cell, and then filled that cell membrane with ground substance from itself. It stretched that out. So what you're seeing here, besides what's in the DNA, is this incredible continuity of life from the mother, from our mother, our common ancestor that we share with all living forms on Earth from the very beginning through this moment. And you begin to see a different story of life. You begin to see a story of life that's one organism, one consciousness that has been unfolding through time, constantly evolving and constantly adapting and constantly moving into open space and filling it with whatever it has, its ground substance, itself. And this is part of us. It's part of our story. Even on a smaller level in our own lives, the same thing is true of us and our first cell. We are really so much our mother. Yeah, we get DNA from our fathers, absolutely, but our mother does the same thing that LUCA did. It's that stretching out of the cell membrane and the ground substance of the cells that has created bodies for us to live in. So we are one evolving continuity. And you can move on here, Bruce. You're trying. Okay. You can go back. Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Right there. So all of this is organized in tensegrity. And more specifically, that's okay, you can stay right there, biotensegrity. Tensegrity, you just scoot up here for a sec and go to the wooden model. Okay, the word tensegrity, coined by Bucky Fuller, means a combination of tension plus integrity. So that's how we're organized, right? That's the architecture of life. Okay, now go. So when it's in living organisms, it's biotensegrity. And you could say, well, biotensegrity then is the architecture of movement. Think of endlessly interconnecting and varying webs of communication and support. Stop thinking about your body like a spinal column stacked like building blocks. Your fascia is like elastic, and it is exerting this continual pulling in to hold you together against this other equal and opposite pressure. Sometimes it's not equal. Sometimes one side wins, but that's your bones, and your bones are pushing out, right? So fascia's squeezing you in, holding you in, while the bones are pushing you out, and it's that meeting place where the forces happen. So think about what that would mean in terms of your comfort level and your risk tolerance. You know, if one of those, if the pushing out didn't equal the pulling in, if it pushed out too much, or vice versa.
Well, it has significant impact on just any movement. If you're in a biotensegrity web and a form and a field that's both, that if one part of it moves, everything expands. So if we move away from the biomechanical model where you're on a joint and it's like a lever and it just moves straight forward or back, right? There's so much more happening. There's an expansion in any movement that you have of like, so if I start pressing forward, my whole body has to be involved. My whole body is expanding and pressing forward, or contracting. My whole body, every bit of my fascia body is beginning to make an adaptation for that movement. It's quite significant in healing injuries, like I did on the floor, learning to reconstruct the movement. This wasn't a thing about muscles. This is a thing about the fascial intelligence.
But we also recognize that myofascia, right? Fascia goes through muscle as well. Muscle's made up of it. Mm. So we're just going to kind of scroll through some. No, go ahead. You can go through all the slides, the art slides. We have a bunch of beautiful slides. We have 4, not a bunch. But just to kind of give you a sense of the continuity beyond the body, you know, the macroscopic view.
And here would be a picture of possibly people would call a toroid, or the energetic field weaving its way around the body.
Right, right. So, so what does this mean? What does it mean for you? Now that you know about the architecture of life unfolding, how does this help you live the life that you've always wanted? Well, you have these latent gifts and abilities and talents that you can develop using this biointelligent network. You know, from the old structure of consciousness, I'm alone, I'm separate, I do this, I do that, I strategize, I set goals, I work, da, 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 da. Yes, the word networking enters into that picture, but, you know, there's a whole other area of how do you really tap into this biointelligent network? And how do we use that to develop these basic intelligences that are enfolded in us?
Here you are.
So I call this your 13 senses and counting, because we're constantly uncovering senses. So just take a look real quick on the left column. Those are the big 5. And then we start naming some other ones from proprioceptive all the way up to the top right, interoceptive. Some people are talking about the intuitive sense now as well. And then I'm also adding in on top of that, this sense of the living matrix, being able to develop a real perception of that, an embodied perception of that. And this, I love this dog stretching. He's reaching his butt and his tail and his whole back up in the equal and opposite direction in order to lean forward without falling in while he's drinking the water. So you too can develop these biotensegral kinesthetic abilities, like this dog, to meet and adapt the changing demands of your environment. So you can be part of an intricate wave of life that is developing from the earliest forms forward into the future. And that's where the siddhas come back into all of this. Siddhas, sometimes spoken of as, things you don't want to develop, things that will get you sidetracked along the path to enlightenment. I'm not saying that getting caught up in them is a good idea by any means, but we want to be able to develop our capacities to live more intelligently and begin to make different choices. So I think the siddhas really play into all of this. This is a listing, a very partial listing of many, many, many. And we've got 3 slides of siddhas. So we just want to give you a little taste.
Well, I think the important thing is about siddhas and capacities. These are our gateways, evolutionary potentials. These are ways that we know the world, ways that we know ourselves, the ways that we can communicate with others on a very sentient level. These aren't things that, to me, I think everybody comes into the world with a certain capacity, an innate capacity that's unique to themselves. And they have a chance to develop them. And I think it's, if we go into the yogic track here, this might be like, this is part of your soul spark. This is part of what you have to bring forth into the world and to develop and to evolve your soul into its higher dimensional development, its higher goals, its innate yearning to be back with its fullness.
So if you look at siddha number 1, Visoka, the joy of elimination of mental disturbances, sensory distraction or deprivation, emotional agitation or fluctuation. There's this space. We'll be working with it during our weekend together. What am I going to say about it? It's this non-reactive space. You can find it like right in the center of your head, between your ears, like where the vestibular canals come in. There's a space, and we're going to work on.
It's not the third eye.
It's not the third eye.
But what it is, it's it was fun because we just reread this, and we take walks every day in nature, and that's been part of our teaching here. And in doing that, we look at nature and look at patterns, and we'll meditate on patterns or clouds or flowers blown in the wind. And in that comes this still point to be able to see all the patterns around us. And there it was, all of a sudden, this joy born of the elimination of mental disturbances. Very peaceful, very beautiful. Here's one.
Go to Sadananda.
Sadananda, the kind of delight which is intrinsic to being and wells up from the depths without any extraneous cause. Isn't that nice?
This is also known as mudita, happiness for no reason. It often arises after a great yoga practice or I was going to say a great run, but I'm not going to say that because it's not an endorphin thing. What I noticed after years of practicing was that it wasn't just that I felt really great after I finished a class. It was also that there was this kind of ongoing sense of happiness, mudita, for no reason. This is something that many yogis have experienced, and maybe you've experienced it. I don't think these siddhas are so far to reach for.
Siddhananda, the delight of pure, undifferentiated consciousness, which abides in the midst of all changing emotional moods, such as sadness and cheerfulness. A lot of this is the ability to hold paradoxes, the ability to sit in different levels of consciousness at the same time, the ability to sit in stress and still be content, still be focused, still be maybe joyous. You know.
So the Siddhananda, this pure, undifferentiated consciousness that you abide in the midst of all sorts of emotions that you still feel, but it's different. You don't get flooded by them. We have a skill we're going to teach you in the weekend. It's called Here and Now I'm Feeling. We're going to touch upon the weekend a bit more in a little bit. Let's go to, I think actually, why don't you just skim through the next slides of the siddhas? We've got 2 more slides. There we go. So you can take a look at some of these things. They're really wonderful, and there's a lot more.
A lot more. We only have a few minutes, so I'd like to let's move on so we can cover how we're going to bring all this together into a real live experiential reality. We could talk and list these things and look at it with our mind, but the biggest thing about this work is it's an experiential. It's experiential, and
so why don't
that's what we're going to do together.
So there we go. There's our slide for the weekend, and
so here's what we're doing. In 2 weeks, we're doing a weekend in our home. We saw this happening a couple of years ago, that we were going to have some people here, and we are going to spend about 16 hours together doing embodied explorations, leveling them skill by skill by skill. We have 8 levels that we're going to go through, and we're going to show you what some of these, there's a little bit of the schedule, so we're going to work all day.
Saturday's a long day.
Saturday's a long day, and Sunday...
half a day, Sunday.
Yeah, half a day. We're going to help you develop. We take people on experiential adventures and help them develop these capacities, bring their awareness of these capacities, show them how to use the capacities, how to enhance the capacities. These capacities are, to me, little gifts of our evolutionary consciousness arising. And we want to be able to take those capacities, which it's easy to bring people to an awareness of things. So you have like a state change. You have an experience, and then higher experience. Maybe you've taken a yoga class, you walk out of the yoga class, you're feeling good and flowing. The hard part is that you're seeing that from a certain level of awareness, a certain stage of consciousness. But when you begin to add them on and layer them, at some point, you actually begin to lift yourself up or move, in, whether you see it as a hierarchy or not, or maybe it's more of an in-depth immersion, you begin to function from a different level of being.
A different structure. It's a structure of consciousness. It's not like you're going up and down and up and down. I mean, you may have your days when you're living mostly in being able to tap into this structure of consciousness, and then something happens and splat, you have a hard time getting back there. But a structure is really a marked growth. You develop a more balanced physiology. You develop more emotional intelligence. And here's another really interesting thing. You evolve your animal nature to move more gracefully through your environment. I'm not talking about going back and moving with the consciousness of a leopard through the jungle. I'm talking about going into your environment with your kinesthetic awareness full on, and your consciousness right there as well. So we've got, let's go to the, yes, good. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We've broken this down into 5 basic skills that we layer. So one of the basic skills is this neuro reset, where you have the opportunity to reset the pattern that's going on in you. And this is one of those practices that you can do anywhere. The more you do it, the better it gets. It's never the same twice. You can constantly vary it. It's always yielding new insights for us. That's one. The second one, attuning to presence. This is what we were talking about before when we talked about like going into the space between your ears. It's like you're hearing, you're not listening for anything, you're just hearing everything. And at the same time, your eyes, you're not intently focused on anything. You're sort of like not soft focus, but you're not disoriented. You're not blurring yourself in any way. You're truly seeing, in fact, without looking for something. The third basic skill we're going to go over is how to polarize your energy field, because that's how the energy moves. And we have a negative pole, our perineum, and a positive pole, our crown. And when those two centers are activated, energy moves. The fourth thing we're going to go over is this thing called the floating breath, where we start with just the pelvic and the respiratory diaphragms, but then we move up into this whole diaphragmatic column. And all of that is breathing in sync, kind of feeling like a jellyfish. And then the fifth basic skill is what we mentioned earlier, here and now I'm feeling, to start to give you an experience of how fluid your feelings are, how quickly they change. And when you're in this centered place of presence, you can feel everything. It's not like your feelings are any less intense, but you're feeling them from this centered space.
Well, there are things that in this instance, they're real. They're what's going on now. They're not a thought. They're not an abstraction. They're not an idea. They're not a judgment. It's just, where are you now? And so we have a place to begin with in any other discussions. All right?
And then the other thing we're going to teach you is, it's like a new language, the metrics of aliveness. It's a way to look at, for instance, you have some of these experiences of the 5 basic skills, and then you can start having metrics by which to look at what kind of interoception, proprioceptive experiences you may be having.
They are, right?
And there they are.
Vibration, pulsation, motility, streaming, grounding, embodiment. We repeat that, we name it, we show it, we enhance it, and all those begin to increase.
So next slide, please. $97.
Okay, isn't that cool?
So why is it so inexpensive, people are saying? We're doing this for an online course. We're videotaping it. So we would ask anybody who would come to sign a release. If you have something about being seen, we would do our best not to feature you solo, but you would probably be seen in the group. So take that into consideration. We would definitely edit out if somebody goes into some process that wouldn't, personal stuff is not going to be in there.
We're committed to bringing this work into the world. It's been a lifetime of development, and we think we've been able to bring it down to a focus where somebody can make a significant change in their perception in their lives within a weekend.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to just do this without people, because a lot of this, if you've ever worked with us, you know that this is a creative process. Things unveil themselves as they're as they're happening. New information, new knowledge, and it takes the face of the relationship that you're with somebody else. So we wanted to make sure that this was live and living and breathing and very real. And so we wanted to make sure that when we documented this, that there were people involved rather than this being us just giving you the exercises. So that's why.
So we've got 4 spaces left. We only have room for 12 people. Housing is full, but if you live nearby us in the Catskills, or you can find housing, there's tons of Airbnb places around here, then, we'd love to have you schedule a call to discuss it with us.
Well, you need to do that if you want to.
You do.
Listen, there are only 4 places left. We have enough people to do this and document it. But we want to know who we're working with, and most of the people we've worked with before in one way, shape, or form, but they've had some experiences in transformative work, and that's important too in this case. So what you could do is, if you're interested, email Elizabeth at energyyogaicloud.com. It's right there on your screen, and we'll start from there. Also, for any of you who are interested in the video, we're going to do it. We're a special pricing once we get it made. Now we're going to have to take these 16 hours or more of how much? Yeah, it might be 16 hours of video. Bring them down and consolidate them into a nice edited version, and that'll be our work in May to do that. And so we're going to charge you the same price of this will be a course of $97 also. So if you want that, there's a link below at the bottom of this page that actually you could press and put your email in there, and we'll put you on that list. And then one last thing is that we have a Facebook group,
free Facebook group
called The Evolving Body, which is it's a research and a sharing about the evolving body. And
what it is, it's like a horizontally organized conversation. It's not like we're the leaders and we're telling you about how this works. It's not that kind of an old-fashioned hierarchy. We recognize that this evolution is a shared experience, and we're all holding special pieces of it. So my vision of it is, come and join the conversation. Tell us about what you're doing. Ask your questions. There'll be lots of information in there about fascia and scientific discoveries and this and that. But it's also a place to be seen and be recognized for who you are and what you're doing, whether you've been working professionally in a field of body work or healing or movement for many years, or if you just are a somanaut. We want to have you, and we want to hear about what you're doing.
And the other thing with that is that this will be our platform for our embodied dialogue experiences. That means we'll put the cameras on in our studio, and we'll do a teaching. This
Short
will be
little
live.
Things.
No PowerPoints. Done with that.
No reading from your script.
No reading scripts. Very, very real. Right with us. And some of it will be a direct teaching, but some of it you can just watch and see how we're exploring this. Some of this is done without words, folks. And you could just start following movement. You'll get so much more out of that, rather than trying to intellectually digest it and do it perfectly and make it look like somebody else.
So the other thing about the embodied dialogues I just want to say is, it's a little taste of class with us, maybe 10 minutes, maybe just a little way. If you need some guidance about how to move your body and unwind and explore things, that's what they're for.
Well, the other day I started my first embodied dialogue, although it was dark, and I'm trying to learn to screen on it. But it was an hour of me in the studio, and I'm working at night. I go in every night around 9 o'clock and work till 10 o'clock. So get ready for this. This is fun. This is going to be really good and valuable for both us and for those participating. So I think that's about all of our logistics here.
Unless there's somebody with questions, we're going to sign off.
Well, let me let me stop the screen share for a second. And we'll be, come on, stopping screen share. And I'll go over here and see if there was any other we can hear you. Okay. I don't see any questions in this room, and I would apologize if you weren't able to reach us.
Hi,
there.
Paige. Hi, Leah. Hi, Eileen. Any questions?
And thank you so much for joining us. That's our first hangout ever. We're not used to doing slideshows, but we thought there was a important amount of information to at least set the backdrop for what we're doing, so that curiosity and intellectual part will have the foundation before we just go more into the direct experience of living in our bodies, using our bodies as a vehicle for the exploration and expansion and development of our consciousness and our ability to be in that one body, that compassionate, beautiful, intimate body that we all share.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.